Ladies and gentlemen, and for any wonderful journalist watching this segment, I'm going to read a New York Times article. Yes, a New York Times article. Malaria drug helps virus patients improve in small study. Interesting headline. Notice that they didn't put hydroxychloroquine. Okay. Then, below, a group of moderately ill people were given hydroxychloroquine, which appeared to ease their symptoms quickly. Okay, this is an article, April 1st, 2020, by Denise Grady. Why am I speaking in this manner? I'm speaking in this manner because President Trump is taking hydroxychloroquine. President Trump is taking hydroxychloroquine, and the media, even though you have people who have been, there's anecdotal evidence in addition to French research, in addition to the fact that it's already being used in hospitals. We'll get to the New York Times article, but here, Newsweek, Democratic lawmaker says Trump saved her life by recommending hydroxychloroquine for the crisis. Michigan Democratic State Representative Karen Whitsitt told Fox News host Laura Ingraham that the controversial drug, it's not only controversial because Trump said something good about it. If he said don't use it, media would say, well, maybe you should use it. So this whole nonsense about, well, Trump was late on this because the intelligence community said, I already debunked that. You can look. The intelligence community, there's no evidence in the form of emails, documents, or anything else. It is according to people familiar with the spy operations. You look at the Washington Post article, it's according to people familiar. So there's no evidence that Trump knew in January, and in late January he had travel restrictions and a task force. But here, Trump says he's been taking hydroxychloroquine. Then it says despite safety concerns. There are safety concerns with vitamin C. You want to know how we know that media is completely twisting all of this? When you look at the actual New York Times article written on April 1st, it says, quote, with no proven treatment for this crisis, many hospitals have simply been giving hydroxychloroquine to patients, reasoning that it might help and probably will not hurt because it is relatively safe. Okay, Trump never said, this is another issue that, okay, you want to talk about lying? Trump tells the truth. Compared to media and Democrats, and definitely compared to Hillary Clinton, he's told the truth far more often than Hillary Clinton or President Obama. I can go from President Obama drinking Flint water, saying it's safe, to Clinton saying it's a security review. I deleted yoga emails. No, nothing sent or received, marked classified. Did it for convenience, but with no proof. So he never also said that it was a cure. See, he never stated it was a cure. The nuance and the context is missing from President Trump. There are studies that show it helps. A French doctor has performed studies, stands by it. Even Emmanuel Macron is like open to it, met with the doctor, and then media even went after him. And he's a hardcore establishment figure. But President Trump, number one, never said it was a cure. He kept saying, well, look, it might help some people. Karen Whitsitt, the Michigan Democratic Party state representative, said it helped save her life. For some people, it might help. If, God forbid, a journalist at the Washington Post or New York Times or CNN or MSNBC, if God forbid, one of those people got sick, they would want to go ahead and try anything if nothing else was working. If there's anecdotal evidence that something works, if there's a French study that something works, if there's a study touted by the New York Times right here, malaria drug helps virus patients improve in small study. You might have other studies that say, well, it could harm people with heart conditions. Then if you have a heart condition, do not take it. How difficult is that to understand? But media doesn't do that. Media says there's consequences. There's negative there's negative consequences to taking it, and there's side effects, and it's dangerous, and there's no evidence in long-term studies that it works. Yeah, but in short-term studies or in certain studies, it does work. So the issue is the study was small and limited to patients who were mildly or moderately ill, not severe cases. Like many reports about this crisis, it was posted at an online service. But the findings strongly support earlier studies suggesting a role for the drug, Dr. Schaffner said. The findings strongly support earlier studies suggesting there's a role for the drug. If you read the New York Times article written on April 1st, President Trump is not touting this drug for people who are susceptible to any of the side effects. Because if you're susceptible to any of the side effects, then you probably shouldn't take the drug. But if you're Karen Whitsitt or President Trump, to make sure he doesn't get it, because the White House doctor said, hey, you know what, try taking this to make sure you don't get it, because you're in close contact with people all the time. If you look at the mortality rate that, now it obviously if you're older, it's different. The mortality rate is higher. But the data is in Stop the Panic. This is by Dr. Scott W. Atlas. So who is listening to Dr. Scott W. Atlas? Who is listening to, who is listening to the French doctor Didier Raoult has pushed for the use of the drug hydroxychloroquine. His study, Didier Raoult, a 68-year-old infectious disease specialist. It's interesting that any doctor, any article, any doctor, whether it's Dr. Scott W. Atlas in The Hill, the data is in Stop the Panic and End the Isolation. The recent Stanford University antibody study now estimates that the fatality rate if infected is 0.1 to 0.2%, a risk lower than previous World Health Organization estimates that were 20 to 30 times higher than motivated isolation policies. You have states, you have blue states that are taking it very cautious, and then you have media saying, well, Georgia opened up and there are new cases. Why don't you ban alcohol and then say, well, if we let's do prohibition all over again, and then say, well, if we allow it to be legal again, people will lose their lives in drunk driving. And then you ban alcohol for a couple of years, realize it didn't work just like in the 20s with the 18th Amendment, and then the day after you you make alcohol legal again, what do you think's going to happen? People will eventually. There are people, unfortunately, and God forbid, unfortunately, in this country, who in the future will lose their lives because of peanuts, because of peanut allergies, because of bee stings, because of drunk driving accidents, because of smoking, because of alcohol abuse. You cannot shut down society under the pretext or guise of saving people from themselves. If you do that too long, that is a political stunt that's backfiring on Democrats. Even Aaron Rodgers, the Packers quarterback, is like, what's going on here? What freedoms do we have? People are asking questions like, I don't know, if the mortality rate is 0.1 to 0.5%. There's a New York Times article that quotes Andrew Cuomo stating that, because there are so many more people than first thought who were infected in New York, the mortality rate's like 0.5%. Obviously, it's higher the age group, but that's the same with the normal flu. But you have any person who has a dissenting viewpoint is deemed a crackpot or not, or he was such a. There are articles about this French doctor. He was such a rising star. He was such a respected figure until he touted hydroxychloroquine. The only thing they want to do is marginalize and silence anything Trump touts has to be wrong. So then they say, well, the intelligence community told him. That's according to people familiar with the spy agencies. There's no evidence of that. But what Trump should have said is he should have told Andrew Cuomo before March 1st. When March 1st, Andrew Cuomo stated, Andrew Cuomo stated, the risk remains relatively low for the people of New York. There's no reason for undue anxiety. And New York is the epicenter of it. Trump should have told him, get masks and ventilators in January and February, because January, none of the state addresses from Newsom or Cuomo, Whitmer, Pritzker, Inslee, all these Democratic governors. This is, if you want to call it a blue or red state, almost half, 48 to 50% on average, since this started, 48 to 50%. Look at the New York Times for the cases of this crisis. 48% just the other day, lives lost are in 3 states. And then if you add in Illinois, it's well over 50% in 4 states. Okay, so we have 50 states. You can look at, we have 40 million people in California. More people lost their lives from the average flu from 2014 to 2017 than of this crisis. Yet the entire state is completely collapsed, $54 billion budget deficit. And then Newsom is asking Trump for a bailout. But you have to ask yourself, did they allow Democrats to vote during the primary? So, yeah, they did. So, it's interesting. There are a lot of experts who disagree with the experts being interviewed. But those experts are not listened to by the Democrats or media because those experts don't give the expert opinion that Democrats want to tout. That's the way public relations works. That's the way hit pieces work. The Daily Beast wrote an unethical hit piece on me, riddled with errors, completely unethical. But the person writing the hit piece never gets an accurate viewpoint of the person they want to denigrate or silence. So you just like with Trump, you never get the actual quote. He never stated it was an absolute cure for everyone. That he never stated that. There's no evidence in terms of documents that you can look at, in terms of data or emails you can look at that Trump knew in January and withheld the information. Because guess what? In February, they were trying to kick him out of office. The evidence shows that you can look at March 1st, a tweet from Andrew Cuomo saying that the risk remains low for the people of New York. And you can look at the evidence in January. Trump declared travel restrictions, and of course, Democrats said it's xenophobic. Even Biden said it was xenophobic. Then there's a fact check saying, well, Biden wasn't necessarily referring to the restrictions he called xenophobic in a tweet. You can't win. Do you understand? You can't win. There's nothing you could do right now because they are in public relations mode. They are like a cornered wild animal that will do anything, scratch, claw, bite, spit, whatever. They'll do anything to twist and deceive and manipulate and then say that Trump lies, and the truth has been lost. They've been manipulating and butchering and mangling the truth the second Trump set foot into the office. So I just want to read you really quickly. Malaria drug helps virus patients improve in small study. A group of moderately ill people were given hydroxychloroquine, which appeared to ease their symptoms quickly, but more research is needed. Okay, so if you have anecdotal evidence, you give to people who it could help. You don't give to people who have ailments or underlying health issues related to the side effects, the potential side effects. Okay? But here, the malaria drug hydroxychloroquine helped to speed the recovery of a small number of patients who were mildly ill from the crisis. Doctors in China reported this week. Then there are other articles saying, well, there was a study in China that said that didn't help. Well, there are certain studies that say things help, and certain studies that say some drugs don't help. Where are the how many tens of thousands of people have lost their lives from opioids? How many tens of thousands of people have lost their lives? And you want to shut down the entire society for a mortality rate of what? What is the mortality rate around the country? According to the Stanford study, it's around or a little bit higher than the average flu. So what are we doing as a society? According to the Stanford study, the data is in. Stop the panic. by Dr. Scott W. Atlas. The recent Stanford antibody study now estimates that the fatality rate if infected is likely 0.1 to 0.2%, a risk far lower than the previous World Health Organization estimates that were 20 to 30 times higher and that motivated isolation policies. When you hear these people, making these videos yelling at, hey, what are you doing? Do they know what mortality rate even means? And do they know that 80,000 people lost their lives in 2018 and 56,000 people lost their lives from the flu in 2015 under President Obama? We didn't tank the economy. 116,000 people lost their lives in 1957 from the flu. And then around 100,000 in 1967. These are facts. So, 1957. So, 1957, 1958 pandemic. CDC. Okay. Around 116,000 people. All right, so 1957 to 1958. Let's see. $1.1 million lives lost worldwide. 1.1 million lives lost worldwide. Okay. And so overall, the pandemic caused 1 to 2 million lives lost worldwide. The CDC estimates 1.1 million. About 70,000 to 116,000 people lost their lives in the United States of America. This is the 1957 to 1958 flu pandemic. You can go on Wikipedia. Did they tank the entire country? Well, it was Eisenhower. It was Eisenhower at the time. Did he tank the country? Did Eisenhower tank the entire United States of America? 1.1 to 2 million people lost their lives. Did the world stop? Give me your thoughts below. Check out H.A. Goodman's other channel. Subscribe to H.A. Goodman's other channel right this second. Share my Times of Israel article. Hillary Clinton 2020 Hillary Clinton, not Biden, will be nominee. And share my Huffington Post article. Hillary Clinton 2020 is a reality. Get ready for 8 years of Trump. I will have made the biggest political call of all time, ladies and gentlemen. President Trump never stated it was a cure for all people. He engaged in perhaps hyperbole, but he never made categorical statements that all people need to take it to cure themselves tomorrow. He's taking it because of New York Times articles like this one that say malaria drug helps patients improve in small study, even mentioning that it's relatively safe. And he never knew in January, because notice how they make claims based on anonymous officials, but they don't give you any details, no evidence, no data, no nothing. And they even say the evidence is classified. So how on earth would they know? Give me your thoughts below. This is an important segment. Thank you so very much.